Imagine waking up 20,000 years ago. You look around and there are no countries, no United States, no China, no Egypt, no borders, no passports. If you wanted to travel somewhere, nobody could stop you because you had crossed an invisible line on a map. So how did humans go from small groups of hunter-gatherers to a world divided into nearly 200 countries? The strange part is, nobody actually invented a country. Countries emerged slowly from one of the oldest human instincts of all, the need to belong to a group. For most of human history, our ancestors lived in small communities. A few dozen people might travel together, hunt together, share food, raise children, and protect one another. There was no government office, no police department, no official territory, and definitely no person standing in the forest saying, "You are now entering another country." But these groups still had something surprisingly similar to borders. They knew which valleys they used, which rivers had fish, which forests contained food, and which areas belonged to another group. If strangers entered a valuable hunting ground, they might not be welcomed, because when survival depends on a limited amount of food and water, territory matters. But there was a problem. Small groups could only grow so large. When everyone knows everyone else, cooperation is relatively simple. You know who is trustworthy, you know who is related to whom, and you know who took your food yesterday. But as populations increased, human societies became much more complicated. And then, around 10,000 years ago, something happened that changed everything. Humans began farming. Instead of constantly following wild animals and seasonal plants, people could stay in one place and grow food. And staying in one place created something hunter-gatherers had rarely possessed in the same way: property. A field could belong to one family, a storehouse could belong to a community, a herd could belong to a particular person, and suddenly there was something worth protecting. Imagine you spend months growing wheat, then another group arrives and takes it. You can't simply pack up your field and walk away, so settlements began protecting their land. More food meant more people. More people meant larger settlements, and eventually, some settlements became cities. One of the earliest major examples was Uruk in ancient Mesopotamia, more than 5,000 years ago. Thousands of people lived together. Farmers produced food, craftsmen made tools, merchants traded goods, workers built enormous structures. And someone had to organize all of it, because you can't have thousands of people living together without answering one very important question: who is in charge? At first, authority could come from elders, religious leaders, or powerful warriors. Eventually, kings and centralized governments appeared, and now humans had something new: a population, a government, a territory, and rules. This was much closer to what we would call a state, but there was still no modern country, because controlling land wasn't enough. You needed people to believe that they belonged to the same political community, and humans discovered an incredibly powerful way to create that feeling: stories. A ruler could tell people that their city was protected by a particular god. A kingdom could develop its own traditions. People could share a language, share rituals, share enemies, share victories, and eventually they could develop a powerful idea: we are one people. That idea was incredibly useful, because you don't need to personally know someone to cooperate with them if you believe they are part of your group. You can pay them taxes, follow their laws, fight beside them, and trust them. Meanwhile, people outside the group become them, and that simple distinction between us and them helped human societies grow far beyond the size of a small tribe. But there was another invention that made large governments dramatically more powerful: writing. The earliest writing systems were not created to write novels or tell people what ancient humans ate for breakfast. Some of the earliest records were basically administration: grain, animals, workers, taxes, goods, land. Writing allowed governments to remember things. A ruler no longer had to personally remember who owed 10 bags of grain. Someone could write it down. Officials could keep records. Taxes could be collected. Supplies could be stored. Orders could travel. And suddenly, a government could control people who lived far beyond the city where the ruler actually lived. Then came roads, armies, messengers, laws, officials, and increasingly organized warfare. A powerful kingdom could conquer neighboring territory and bring it under one government. This happened again and again. Cities became kingdoms, kingdoms became empires, and empires controlled enormous territories. But here's something important. Ancient political borders were nothing like modern borders. They could move constantly. A king could conquer a city. Another king could take it back. A mountain could become a boundary. A river could become a boundary. Or an army could simply decide where the boundary was. There was no permanent world map divided into neat shapes, and for thousands of years, most people didn't think of themselves as citizens of a modern nation. They might identify with their city, their tribe, their religion, their ruler, their language, their family, or their kingdom. The idea of national identity became much stronger much later. As governments became more centralized, populations became more connected. Schools taught common histories, governments standardized languages, armies recruited citizens, newspapers spread the same stories to millions of people. And gradually, people who had never met each other could begin thinking, we are part of the same nation. Then humans did something that seems almost ridiculous when you think about it. We started drawing borders on maps. Some borders followed mountains and rivers. Others were negotiated between governments. Others were created after wars, and some were drawn by people who had never even visited the land they were dividing. But the strange thing about a border is that the line itself isn't physically there. You can stand on one side, take one step, and suddenly you're in another country. The soil doesn't change, the sky doesn't change, the animals don't care. But humans do, because everyone agrees that the invisible line means something. And that's the secret behind countries. A country isn't just a piece of land, it's an enormous human agreement. An agreement about who makes the rules, who belongs, who pays taxes, who controls the territory, and where that territory ends. Millions of strangers can cooperate because they believe they share the same political identity. And when millions of people believe the same idea, that idea becomes incredibly powerful. Today, you can look at a world map and see hundreds of countries. They seem permanent, almost natural, but they aren't. The borders have changed, kingdoms disappeared, empires collapsed, new nations were created. Old nations split apart, and some borders that look ancient on a map are actually surprisingly recent. The modern political world is the result of thousands of years of humans experimenting with one question: how do you organize people who don't know each other? We started with families, then tribes, then villages, then cities, then kingdoms, then empires, and eventually, countries. So the next time you look at a map, don't just see lines separating different colors. See thousands of years of human cooperation, conflict, farming, writing, warfare, belief, and identity. Because nobody woke up one morning and invented countries. Humans built them one agreement at a time. And somehow, those invisible agreements became the lines that divide our entire world. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, subscribe to Monkey to Modern for more. See you in the next one.